If you're ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Central Otago District Council. It's a pleasure to have so many councillors here today. I know Councillor McKinley online from Bannockburn. Welcome, Nigel, and welcome to anybody else who may be joining us online as well. Karakia, Councillor Gillespie, please.
Thank you, Bishop. Nā mihi o te rā, I te anu e hui nei, kia tau ti rangamara, kia whakatapua tata. Mina mea, hei whakapanu ana tātou humi e, hami e hui e taikmo.
Thank you. We have no apologies today, and we now invite our public forum speaker, Peter Griffian from the Central Otago Housing Group. Welcome, Peter. Come on up and have a seat.
Thank you. Will I stand or sit?
Just whichever you're most comfortable with.
I'll stand.
Right.
Well, good morning and thank you. I'm Peter Griffian, as has been introduced. The Central Otago Housing Group was initiated as a task from the 2022 Community Hui held by the Alexandra Council for Social Services. Central Otago Housing Group is made up of 6 people presently. Carol Dillons from Community House, Sandra O'Neill from Presbyterian Support Services, Matt Beek from Central Aid Trust, Mary Flannery from ALS, no, did I get that right? AWLS, and of course your own Rebecca and myself. So I'm just a retired real estate agent, trying to grow cherries and very poorly this year, I might add. The group has worked with Rebecca McGilwray from McGilwray Consulting to firstly understand the process of strategic doing and then to use this in the work we undertake. The Central Otago Housing Group aims to engage stakeholders and the community, identify housing needs and propose solutions to address Central Otago's housing challenges. This includes the following: re-energise conversation around affordable housing in the district involving CODC, the Central Otago Affordable Housing Trust and other additional stakeholders. May I just add, personally, I prefer the word obtainable rather than affordable, because I think affordable does tend to stigmatise as in bottom end. Explore the potential avenues that are within the district to access affordable or gifted land for housing initiatives. Conduct an assessment of affordable prospects for economical housing in Central Otago while examining existing models and potential solutions. Lastly, engage a range of stakeholders, including ACOS, to gain insights into current and future housing needs across the continuum. The group has been developing a map of Central Otago's housing ecosystem and have been building on previous work of both the Council and the Central Otago Affordable Housing Trust. As part of this work, we have engaged with a number of public and social housing providers to explore opportunities in this district. At this stage, the group believes that a broad housing needs assessment would be beneficial as a tool to help address the housing issues being faced in the district. We all know there is a problem. A housing needs assessment would help to illustrate the extent of it, who is most affected, and would give an evidence base to work from when deciding on how to prioritise further future responses. We build on the stakeholders and other work already undertaken by Council. The group is currently working on a scope of that assessment and hoping to understand its potential cost. Once that is determined, the group will be seeking Council support, both in principle and financially. to help it successfully apply for funding from other sources. The group understands that council is currently facing financial pressures and hopes that this joined up approach will help to minimise the financial burden on council. And can I just add, we are here to get alongside. We see that we are in the enablers of partnerships and networking, and we see the benefit. We think there's a lot that's happened in the past. We're not coming from an ethos of pointing the finger or blame. We really want to get alongside, oil the machine, connect the dots there, and there's so much out there that's already been done on this. We appreciate it. The group sees this work as an investment in a solution for the housing dilemma that is being faced by our community. We know that housing is a key issue economically and socially in the district, and we want to work together to address that. We believe that a housing needs assessment will be a resource for the entire housing sector and will be used to encourage stakeholders to meet the opportunity the assessment identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Councillors, any questions? Comments? Basically.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm very happy to hear you say obtainable as opposed to affordable, because I think that's where it's a huge stumbling block. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you completely. That wording is much more appropriate.
Nothing like a morning shower. I was trying to get the right word.
Obviously you did, obviously the financial pressure through council that everyone is aware of. So it's nice to hear you mention that as well. You talk about economically and socially. That's the two that was that correct? Economically, I wonder how council will work in that space. Socially, I think I would like to have, I don't know if there's anything more that you can expand on that, or whether this is the appropriate time for that, but socially I think that is something that council is very well placed from the work we've done already, and also potentially what that might look like going forward.
But just to give you a broad brush approach of that, and while I don't want to be dramatic, I think everyone in this room knows that we have people living in tents year round. And at the other end of the scale, we've got executives who want to come to the area that can't find housing. And it's a pretty commonly known thing in the community. You can go to any business and they say we can get people all right, but we really struggle to house them. So again, I think that word obtainable overarches from start to finish. If that's something that in a very rounded way.
Yeah.
So socially, yeah, there's many issues. And what we have done is we've put a housing continuum together, starting right from homelessness, and we all decided that that was a form of housing, because some people choose it, some don't choose it, but end up there, right through to private ownership. And we've categorised them all so that we can then work through what the needs are for each one. And that's why, of course, we think this needs assessment would really hit the mark for that, because it takes the drama out of it, brings reality and truth to it.
Data over anecdotes.
Sorry, but
Data over anecdotes.
yeah.
That's where we have to go. Anybody else? Peter, wish you all the very best, and we look forward to what your group comes back with in due course. Yep, appreciate the time.
And likewise, we look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Righty-ho, that moves us on to the confirmation of the minutes of our meeting of, my computer's decided to stop right now, so that's helpful. Thank you. 13th of December. Somebody who was there wish to move those minutes. Thank you, Sarah. Second with Tracy. Any discussion? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Please remember to step aside from any decision making when a conflict arises between your role as a member and any private or other external interest you may have. So keep in mind towards perceived conflicts of interest, and also update your register and check it on a regular basis. That moves us on to item number 2412, which is the Water Services Operations and Maintenance Contract. As Councillor McKinley is online and he leads that portfolio, Councillor Rawls will take the chair as deputy lead. Thank you. Cheryl?
Thank you. So we have duly to speak to this agenda item.
I'll take the report as having been read. So the Three Waters Operations and Maintenance Contract term initially ended on the 30th of June 2023. And a new 2-year contract was negotiated with Incumbent to get us through to the expected Three Waters transition date of the 30th of June 2024. So the negotiated contract had the ability for 3 further 1-year extensions subject to agreement of the new water services entity and the contractor. And we had anticipated that the new entities would have a look across the contracts and start looking into how they might structure who does work and how it gets done differently. But that they would need a period of time to get all that up and running and everything aligned. So as Three Waters will now not be transitioned into a new water entity, the council needs to consider procurement of this work. So the intention had been in September 2023, prior to the national elections, that a procurement plan would be presented to council in November 2023. So due to the delay in establishing the new government and then getting clarity on the new government's intentions and the workload that's now flowed out of their intentions, this hasn't been able to be completed prior to Christmas. So we are now recommending that procurement be undertaken prior to 30th of June 2025 with a detailed procurement plan coming to council for consideration at the March 2024 meeting, and I'll put a timeline into the report of how that would work. So I think it's important just to reflect that over the last 2 years we have been in a transition environment where we've been actually structured to muddle through to transition to new water entities. And it wouldn't have been cost effective for council to have made significant changes in the way we were delivering, because you wouldn't have got the return on that investment making change, because the cost wouldn't have been recognised in that initial 2-year period. So our focus during transition has been on providing sufficient information to the National Transition Unit to ensure that the new entities were set up for success and that the legislation covered the things that it needed to cover, while still meeting the day-to-day delivery needs with the existing team. So now that it is clear that council will be responsible for delivering Three Waters into the future, it's important that we set the staffing and contract structures up to successfully deliver into the longer term. And that's going to require a step change to meet the increased regulatory oversight and enforcement environment that we're now operating in. So it's going to take us some time to work through the various options to ensure that council has all the information it needs to enable you to robustly compare the benefits and cost implications of these options. So we started work on this, and Thornton Hogan had been working collaboratively with council staff to work through what the cost drivers are in these contracts and identify the work that's delivered by subcontractors who actually work for a main contractor. So that work's often not necessarily core work that a Three Waters or civil contractor would undertake. And so examples of this are sampling and the laboratory work that's associated with this. So we spend around $600,000 a year in a good year. When we've got issues, like the year previously, that had jumped up to $1 million. So there's possibilities that we could do something and have the contracts direct with the laboratories themselves. Another item, an example, is landscaping. So we're required to keep our treatment sites, keep the vegetation tidy on them, but you know, a civil contractor is not necessarily the best contractor to be doing that piece of work. We might be able to piggyback off our parks contract and get that done more cost effectively while they're out there. They obviously don't have the same level of service requirements around as a park would have, so there's some more flexibility to improve that operational efficiency of the parks contract and just slot this into it. So we are. It's also possible that there might be more cost effective ways to deliver some of the work by managing it and directing it themselves. So we are working through that to understand if that's the case or not. In terms of the Section 17A requirements, we are now going to have to consider these, but I don't believe that they'll necessarily impact on the procurement of a new contract. But those sorts of things tend to be a longer term view rather than still going to need a contract to carry on for a period of time. So we really do need to understand in more detail what the anticipated repeal and any replacement legislation is going to have in it. At this point, we're really scarce on detail other than knowing that we had to put the whole 10 years into the LDP past the 30-year infrastructure strategy. And until we see that, it's not really worth second guessing what it might contain. We did do quite a bit of work across the Otago and Southern region with Morrison Knoll in 2021, where they did a cross-regional state assessment. We'll talk to the other councils to understand whether there's potential for us to revisit that work and maybe update it when you see the Section 17A. Any questions?
Any questions? Yeah? No?
Yeah, I'm quite pleased to hear that you're looking at the planting or the restoration work. Because I read in the report, well, wastewater plants, there was 225,000, 250,000 restoration work with consultation with NIWA. And when in the Minitata, we've got the Te Aki Minitata group who've been doing that planting throughout the whole region and growing their own plants suitable for the environment. So it'd be nice to think that some of that stuff we can save money on consultation with others and use our own people in our own community. Yeah.
Look, and yeah, I don't know all the detail around that. Our contract as it currently stands is we're actually quite standoffish around it. It's actually structured that the contract takes full responsibility for a whole lot of things. So if we ultimately carry the can if things go wrong, but they have that management sites as part of their responsibility. So we're thinking that it might be more appropriate under the new regulatory environment that we actually have more direct ownership and oversight of what, particularly the treatment sites, but even the reticulation.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like we've got good groups of volunteers doing things on behalf of the LRC or government funding, doing exactly the stuff we're going to consult with NIWA, who aren't in our corner, aren't in our patch. And we've got to look at every cost, and we can save 40% of that by using our own locals and our own local knowledge, and that's where we should be heading.
There's often trade-offs. If you get bundled too much, you have higher management costs. So that there's a sweet spot, and then we just need to try and understand what the sweet spot is. I would say, you know, when you look at some sectors, they are quite more advanced in their asset management and their culture around delivery. I think Three Waters is perhaps a bit behind it. It hasn't had, you know, if you look at Rowan, for example, it has the Waka Kotahi funding, and then that's guided or actually directed a whole lot of things that councils have to have in place for the management of that money. And because Three Waters hasn't had that, it's often been easier to not invest in those sorts of things because they cost money. You've got to pay for it, but you get a long-term reward from doing that, but it's not an instantaneous reward.
Tracy?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Hopefully I don't go over the other ones. And I might jump around a bit from your report. So and you just mentioned with regards to culture, a significant change in culture would be required. Can you expand on that for me?
So I think that within the water sector in New Zealand, and I'm not singling Central Otago out for this, I think there's, you know, we've run on the smell of an oily rag. Often, if you think about where the original management of water infrastructure came from, it was really even debundled down to community. So it might be debundled down to individual townships within communities. So there's been very few people to pay for the upgrades required. In a democratic environment where people get voted in and out on rates increases often. So it's made it that hasn't had the level of investment across the board that's needed. And that's bred a culture within the workforce that there's not an expectation to meet compliance because the community couldn't afford compliance. And so near enough is good enough with the money you have available to spend. And that's kind of the culture, I would say, that needs to shift, where we've now got regulators who are flexing their muscles and saying actually not good enough, government's backing them and we're going to have to step up. So that takes a change in thought. You've got people who have systematically through their careers believe they're doing the best thing for their community with what's available, but now saying, well, actually, no, you're expected to achieve this. So that sort of culture change takes a bit of effort and time on the place.
Okay, which ties directly what you're just saying it into, and you've mentioned it as well, about when you now live in an enforcement environment, which we have heard previously around the stable about, I guess, a fear about enforcement. What's the situation at the moment with enforcement?
So we know that Te Mara Arawai have been looking at protozoa treatment. They're also looking at other things. Those other things maybe haven't affected us because they're the things we have been doing. So what we focus on is what we haven't done. So we've had direction from them that we have to keep on with putting that protozoa treatment in place by a certain timeline, or have a plan that's signed off by them beforehand. Likewise with the regional council around non-compliance with consents. And that, if you look across Otago South or right across New Zealand, non-compliance with consents is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But we've been told that's not okay anymore, and you will do it. And excuse my knowledge,
But ultimately it is.
well, it becomes our challenge, but the regulators are saying the fact that it's going to be expensive is not a defence to not meeting the compliance requirements.
Or fine to.
So as far as prosecution, you're not too, at the moment, you're not worried about that?
Like we are progressing with that protozoa treatment, but there's a lot of little details and now standards that we've got to meet around monitoring and reporting. It's very easy to miss, somebody doesn't read something on a day and suddenly, Joyce have been waiting for me that benign, but it doesn't. Yeah, so we know that if we don't comply, we're going.
Yeah. So I understand at the moment though that the government has said that there will be no prosecutions. Obviously,
Yeah.
but there have been nothing that there's going to be no prosecutions at the moment.
For non-compliance reporter.
Yeah, if you acting.
I think if you're acting with integrity and progress in your upgrades, then that's what they're saying. I think if you're sitting on your laurels, not necessarily upgrades, then you should.
You called them to the minister.
Take
Right.
prosecutions.
Okay.
It might not be next month. It might take, we've got till December to be making significant progress on our first round of protozoa upgrades.
So I guess then the next thing, the length of time. I have some reservations about extending for another year. For a lot of the reasons that you've already given in the report, and 10 years is an incredibly long time for one contractor to be in that space.
Yeah, and look, I'll be honest, ideally, our team would like to be in a position that we are starting off with a new contract and a new environment. We've actually stepped back and said we could end up making the same mistakes in being worse off or definitely no better off if we don't take the time to really work this through properly. We didn't review the contract documents properly last time because of the confined timeline we had. And there's things, big looks in there that we can pick up. We would have done if we had more time to read through them and review things. So I think when you and any contract that we put in place is going to be again for a decent period of time, or else no other contract can be interested in tendering. So we kind of get locked into these things and you're stuck with problems. So we would have liked to have been able to come here and tell you we could do it sooner, but yeah, we think you'd get a worse outcome than it be. take a year. Thornton Hogan are working really well with us. They are open that if we were to identify that there were some things that they currently subcontract out that we wanted to bring back in-house, they are open. Conversations around them being phased out of their contract earlier for the re-tender date.
So clearly testing
I
is
think
one of those.
I think it's fair to say that although it's frustrating, extending the contract for a year does give a lot of opportunities to create a contract, a tender document that will give us the opportunity to maybe break out some activities and get much more competitive tenders and more control. So, and I think it'd be fair to say, Julie, that the contractual relationship between council and Fulton Hogan has improved.
Yes, it has. Yes.
So I guess the other thing is that, for me, is that we're going to be halfway through an election cycle, and we're going to be, I mean, we don't know. We knew that there was a possibility going to be a change in government. We know that on the 8th of March, they are going to be releasing more information. So I appreciate that you're in a bit of a holding pattern at the moment, but we did know that there was a possibility of the change of government. What I don't want to see is that we get a year down the track and then if there is a possibility of another change of government, that we're not actually moving ahead and we get stuck in this cycle of just thinking, oh, it could be a change of government, could be a change of government. And I'm not sure how that actually.
Yeah. So we have been able to address some of our resourcing issues within the water tank. That's helping us actually make more progress. It had been an issue over the last 12 months. So I'm confident that we're not going to be sitting here saying we want to push this out for another year, because we actually don't really want to be telling them that now. So this was the last resort. And look, I don't think even if there is a change in government, you would need another contract. Most of the councils are probably going to be in a similar situation to us at the moment, because they all did the same thing. We're pushing a lot of them. I think Southern District Council was the only one that went out to tender in the last couple of years. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it is unfortunately the situation we discussed.
I've just got a couple of questions as well, and one on that, and you might have hopefully an answer. The water team is under so much pressure as it is, and you see with the additional resources, it's still a massive workload for a relatively small team to be carrying. Could the use of consultants to do some of that lead work enable this to be tendered this year?
So we will utilise consultants and document preparation in there. We might do that ourselves, but and we will utilise them in the Section 17A review. So there are bits where they are specialists where we bring them in. Sometimes what happens when you bring a consultant in is that they're real specialists, but they're not that necessarily understanding of what the community might think and need. So you can actually end up having to redo some of that work. You have to pick where you spend money on consultants really easily. As part of our budgets for 2024, we have got some increases to enable, or some changes, they're not actually increases, changes to enable resourcing to change within the water team. And we will be talking to you as we go through that budget process. And if there was a need, I'm sure Peter will be able to talk with you around maybe accelerating that if we felt that we had a significant issue in resourcing that we needed to address.
Because I would like to see that if an extension is granted, the work really driving ahead on this. And as part of that, I wonder if the procurement process would also include the opportunity to examine cross-border or cross-boundary collaboration to achieve cost savings, recognising that some of that regional work has previously been done.
Yeah, yes, we should be looking at this. And anyway, that's what Section 17A.
It'll all be on the table. And the only other question I had was that in the extension that we gave last time, the 1 year extension opportunities were for the contractor and the new entity, not between us. Are there any issues with the contract with it being us and not the new entity?
Well, I don't believe the contractor has an issue with that being us and not the entity, and I don't believe either, given that we are now legally effectively the entity, I don't think that would be an issue. I can get that checked, but I certainly know for I don't have an issue.
Any other questions?
Yeah, in some of the smaller schemes in the future, talk about consultants, point of use filtration. Are we looking down that? Like obviously we're going to look at these big schemes, and is there a chance to subsidise, cross-subsidise a house point of use filtration ultraviolet to mitigate massive cost of ratepayer?
Yeah, so that's probably a little bit outside the scope of the O&E contract, but it's, we have been looking at that as an option for some small townships. The problem we have at the moment is that Te Mana Arawai hadn't actually defined what the point of entrance treatment is that they, that going to accept as being compliant. So when I had had a conversation with them about this, and they seemed surprised that we were contemplating it for maybe small townships that hadn't anticipated that could be an outcome. So I think there's a wee way to go before we're able to.
Because really, for the cost of ratepayer, it would be far, far cheaper
Yeah.
to have it, that, and to be fair, they'll be responsible for the cost of that or formula we have to work out. But if you go for Pateroa or something like that, where you've got to have to put a whole treatment plant in for 60 or 70 houses, where you can put a $2,000 treatment plant there. And if the only hiccup is Te Mana Arawai, well, that's our legislator, that's our roles of our local government or our mayor and, you know, our role then or the elected members, or the Minister of Parliament, because we can't fight regulations that are prohibitive for doing business in these communities.
Yeah, and look, point of entry is one of the options we've been considering for Pateroa. There are challenges around it because you do, under the legislation, where the legislation is currently drafted, we are the water supplier, so we would also be responsible for the maintenance of those systems.
So sort of
I'm
makes
not saying it's right.
Yeah.
I'm just saying legally, that's how it currently sits, is we're responsible for maintenance of the USDS treatment process. So the other thing is, one of our issues is that when we get dirty water down those rivers, our treatment processes don't work, and neither will those point of entry. So what do you do when you actually water that you're delivering can't even be treated through the point of entry? And the ones that will achieve compliance will be a lot more expensive than $2,000.
Yeah, and I'm only just dragging a number out of the air, but I mean, it gets to the point that you're not front lighting 50,
Yeah.
60, $70 million for a lot of these settlements because that's what we've got. By default, with the size of our area and the water schemes we've got, that's just the default.
Yeah, and look, I would anticipate that, and I'm guessing here, based on what political parties previously objected to in the water services legislation, which was the one that defined what a water supply would be that fell under all the requirements. Both the Act and National parties were opposed. The only issue that they opposed in the legislation was the definition of a water supplier, and they wanted that to be, I think it was anything with less than 30 properties or less was excluded. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that gets repealed, but I don't know until we see what the legislation is going to say. No idea really. But what that would mean is it'll change what a private water supplier is. So it's only the bigger ones that are required to comply, not those small rural supplies.
Have we got any other questions? Okay, so what we've got is recommendations are: A, receives the report and accepts the level of significance. B, approves extending the existing Three Waters maintenance and operations contract with Fulton Hogan for a further 12 months to 30 June 2025. C, direct staff to prepare and present a procurement plan for delivery of Three Waters operations and maintenance and minor capital works on 2024. And D, authorises the chief executive to give effect to this resolution. And move it, second it, please. Okay, Stu and Martin. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So now we come to item number 24.1.3, the January wastewater compliance status update. Julie.
So Joyce is going to present this one.
Further, I take this report as read. I'll give you an update on our compliance status for wastewater sites that are under abatement notice, which are Alexandra, Formal, Roxburgh, Naseby, and Rainville. Site audits, monthly audits are ongoing, and all sites were in acceptable conditions in December 2023. Alexandra wastewater, the UV lamps were replaced earlier this month, as the existing ones were at the end of their life. Last week, we had a joint site visit by CRDC, Becca, and Puddinhogan. And the purpose of the visit was to review the operational performance of the treatment plant. An application to extend the abatement notice will also be lodged once we receive the January 2024 sample results. Normal nitrogen levels were compliant for November and December. We believe this is due to the warm temperature and additional aeration. The nitrogen removal project is also progressing to deal with the long-term nitrogen issues. We received a report from the consultants in December 2023 with a preferred option, and we are planning to visit neighboring councils who have recently installed the same system and learn from their experience.
Yeah, so we will have a report coming to council with a procurement plan and with a recommendation on what we install there in the procurement plan by March.
For Roxburgh, the tender to be sludged, the bonds was awarded to Site Care Limited, and they have started the initial work to establish the site to be able to desludge the bonds. Rainville and Naseby, we have completed the interstate sampling, and results were provided to the consultants, and we are waiting for the report to be able to understand what the next actions we should take to get the site in compliance. And similar to Alexandra, we had a site visit for Naseby and Rainville as well last week to be able to understand the operational performance of the site. Any questions?
Yeah, on the site visit, joint site visit by CRDC, Fontenhome and the consultant, does the consultant go to every, why do we have to have them there if we're just going through business as usual?
Because this is not business as usual. So, and these are really complex sites, and they're not performing as well as we need them to perform. So they are coming in and saying, if you fine tune this and you do that, and then.
So do we pay for that or the contractor pay for that?
We pay for that. So this is this isn't all around what a contractor has and hasn't done. Some of this is around the ability of those sites to deliver the level of compliance that we're required to deliver.
So why doesn't the contractor who takes the contract out, if he needs specialist attention, they need specialist attention and specialist detail, is it not up to them to engage a consultant to help their business when they put the contract in?
The guts of this is that we will pay whatever it happens, and we are responsible, held accountable. So we have engaged the consultant that the things that the consultant is looking at is not necessarily anything to do with what the contractor's contract covers. It's around whether that piece of kit is even able to deliver under the changing environment or review. So sometimes it's population growth, or weather conditions, or stormwater inflow. There's all sorts of things that can contribute to how well plants perform that are outside the control of the contractor. And so Beck has come in and gives advice around that stuff.
Isn't the key thing about this is that this is actually about making sure that we comply. So it's about giving the advice about that as well, then what you might do to ensure that you comply to remove the abatement notices. And that's a skill set that doesn't necessarily sit either in-house or with the contractor.
So treatment consultants are really specialised.
Yeah.
It's not something the council or even a contractor would employ. They're quite scarce and they're very highly skilled and specialised in what they do. When we bring them in because having them give us advice means that what we try and a whole lot of different things that then don't work and we've wasted money. So we bring these guys in because it's going to cost a lot of money to fix, and we want to make sure that what we're doing is going to really target the issue.
No, I need you to clarify something for me, please. With the abatement notices in relation to they said in the start of January 23 with E. coli, phosphorus and nitrogen. So that was the issues. They were above the limit. Is that correct?
Yes.
And not compliant. So for Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So does the UV lens, does that fix those problems?
It helps with E4 levels, which is the one we are not for,
Yeah.
most not compliant for.
So that UV lens
Yes,
helps with it.
Yes.
How long does it take to order a UV lamp? If it wasn't working in January, how can it
Oh, no,
take us to December?
It's been working, but we've replaced it. So our previous so we had an issue there with a while ago. There's been, and when we connected Clyde and we started having issues with with the plant being and the UV lamps over there because of the chemical that they added Clyde to make sure we don't get smells along the pipeline. So as we've worked through trying different things at Clyde, we've got back, the plant is currently operating compliantly, but because the way they measure it is a 90th percentile over the last 4 samples that are taken quarterly, you've got to get 4 compliant samples before you're back within that 90th percentile range. So the last 3 have now been compliant, and if we stay the way we are now, and the next samples the same, we will be compliant. Unfortunately, as soon as you're non-compliant, it's really going to take you a year to get to compliance because of the way the consent structure, which isn't altogether that helpful.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Thanks, Cheryl. In terms of the aerators and the warm temperatures, have we got any sense which is the mix? Are the aerators really doing a job, or is it that we've got a hot summer and we're going to be back to square one come winter? We don't know.
We will definitely go back to non-compliant when the weather gets cold again.
Right.
And we know that cold weather is affects nitrogen treatment ability, and that's similar to what we've got in Roxburgh. So, but we also know that if you add aeration, it does help, but it won't make the problem go away. But if you're only breaching by a tiny bit, then aeration might be enough to get you to where you need to be. But we know in Cromwell when it gets cold, the breach is too high for aeration to be able to address on its own.
But isn't it just the nature of waste? Like, I mean, are we getting to the bars getting too high that's unaffordable to do it?
Well, there is nitrogen removal processes. They're not cheap to install and they're not cheap to operate, and that's why costs start going up. But that's a bit of a factor of the population growth that's happening in Cromwell as well. Climate change. So we seem to be able to blame a lot of things on climate change. But weather patterns.
It's rich feed.
The Roxburgh plant, it said that the monthly effluent monitoring had been undertaken for 1.5 years and you had good data, and it was now on hold, but it does talk about still sampling during the desludging process. So is it just the monthly on hold, or they'll still effectively be monitoring it monthly?
We will still sample for compliance period, which is February, August.
Yeah.
We may do some additional sampling during the desludging just to be able to understand if there was an additional effect to the final effluent.
Yeah. So we know that often with this sludging, it can stir things up a bit too. So
Right.
Yeah, you often will see your compliance levels drop while you're doing that work, and then once the pond settles down and gets its help, kind of all the bits start working, algae and that start working, it gets more healthy.
And then the only other question I had at the moment was the wave bands at Naseby that says some work completed, more work required, and instructions being provided. Was it the work that was done initially was insufficient, or we decided it needed more?
So initially, we did get a price to do some really significant work on the wave bands, but we've since been back and had another look at them, and we reckon we can do a much lower cost patch up job to get us through a number of years without having to spend. It was close to $1 million to spend. So we believe there's a lower cost immediate repair that will actually buy us a few years before we actually have to do that more expensive inspection. And that's the.
Could I just going back to Roxburgh, could I just ask about the line item of $500,000 for the desludging? Is that that is still the confirmed price?
Updated that to what the tendered price is, because the tendered price is actually higher than that.
And that's why I asked.
Yeah, your last meeting, that Nigel and I went in.
So that, the tendered price was closer to $650,000, which includes contingencies, so it will, yeah, it'll be more than 500,000 and less than 600.
Right, thank you.
Finley.
Can we, are we intending to have a look at our tender documents so that we give cost a higher weighting?
Yeah, we're looking at that.
Thank you.
We don't have anything going out in the next couple of months, so we've got a bit of time to work very well. And we'll come back to council and not be with
Okay.
Have we got any other questions?
Yeah, just a clarification. The forward works progress here for everybody to out, so I missed something.
So Alexandra, it's around how we're operating the plant rather than government. So other plants all needed things done to get them compliant, whereas Alexandra, it's just changing how we operate. There is a huge program of forward works for Alexandra that the County Council is part of that 2024 LTP, but we don't need that to actually operate day to day within our compliance laws. But we do need to upgrade to future consent requirements.
And future demand on that existing plant.
Yeah, the capacity limits will be exceeded through growth,
Yeah.
and we will have requirements, or we have requirements in our current consent. Consider what the future of that plant is for a different disposal option.
Am I correct in saying we're quite vulnerable?
It'll work.
That'd be vulnerable.
So we've actually identified it. We've gone through a prioritisation process on the capital works program, and we've identified that the Alexandra plant will take a number of years to do any upgrade, because it's going to be a really significant upgrade that's required and it'll cost a lot of money. So we are coming back to you with a proposal for doing some intermediate work to help reduce the risk of a mechanical plant failure and the corresponding non-compliance that we would need.
Well, just further to that. Am I right in saying that the current state of the plants is currently at capacity? Is that potentially going to have an effect on future growth in this area?
So the current plant's not at capacity, but it does come close to its capacity when we have big rainfall events. And so if we have a bit of a focus on getting stormwater out of the wastewater when it rains heavy, we can actually free up some capacity. I have talked with the regulators and some key stakeholders around. We are working through longer term plans for that plant, but they're not going to be. They're going to take probably 8 to 10 years if we go ahead to get things commissioned. So in the corresponding period, what they have indicated that there's likely to be the ability to increase capacity volumes for a shorter period of time while we're implementing significant upgrades.
Why I'm asking this, the development community around here has expressed some concerns to me that with Plan Change 19 and coming on stream later this year, that the projected growth may be stymied by the inability for the wastewater treatment plant to actually meet what projected demand.
Yeah, so the issue there is that volume limit that we have on our consent for a discharge. If we would be able to apply for a variation to a consent for that, if we are quite clearly seen to be moving forward with the upgrades that we've been looking at, then it's likely that variation to our volume limit. So yes, if we get no variation to our volume limit, then that could become an issue. It's not going to be immediate, but we're well aware that we do have some capacity limitations under our current consent.
I'm going to just follow and can we, with confidence, give a clear message to the developers out there who wish, you know, I'm thinking of like with Laitahu with the Pines and Plan Change 19 and the infill housing, are you confident we're going to be able to, that plant is going to be able to meet the projected demand?
You're really putting me in a tight spot here. Look,
Sorry,
it's
people are asking, I'm being asked this
I
question.
can't say that until we've signed off on what we're going to do in our 2024 MTP around the future of that plant. Because it's going to come down to the willingness of the community to pay for the cost of the work that's required to get us through consenting processes. And if we don't go through those consenting processes to demonstrate that we're going to be doing that work, then we could well have some capacity.
And then, again, I referenced that you said earlier about the cultural change. Yes, the cultural change has to happen within the staff perspective, but also has to happen at the political level. We're around this table, we need to accept the fact is that there's going to be significant cost increases to ratepayers. But if we don't do that, we're not going to see the growth that's under demand. So
the capital program that's coming to you has a large component of growth we can do.
And we will be reviewing our development contributions, so developers themselves will be contributing a large chunk of money to that growth.
yeah, I think when the developers, you know, that's at there was an awareness that some of those costs, future costs, are going to fall to those who are making the profits on. But generally speaking, the costs also spread across the rest of the ratepaying to actually accommodate that growth. Thank you, Judy.
Typically on those projects, what we get is that there's a level of service jump in it. There's a renewal component because you're replacing current plants, and then there's a growth component as well. So we split that all up. Okay.
So any further questions? Okay, so the recommendation is that we receive the report. Can I have a member in second basis? Okay. What was that? Is that you?
Yeah.
I'll second. So, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you, Julie and Joyce. So now we come to item number 24.1.4, which is the proposal for electronic waste disposal. And we've got QP and Lauren, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to take the report as read, but just to summarise, Wastebusters, who used to operate the site at Boundary Road in Alexandra, used to offer recycling services for Alexandra Waste. With the closure of the facility at the end of June last year, there hasn't been a facility for that type of waste, so it's most likely ended up in landfill. So this report's just recommending that compost collection is introduced at the Alexandra Rescue Stations.
I just had one question about the fees and charges. And that is, I'm guessing the numbers tag to specific items, but I wondered if for ease of use for both staff and people, if we could just say if it fits in this box, it's $5, if it fits in this box, it's 10, if it's bigger than this, it's $20. Just having $4, $6, $5, $17, $25, it's quite a lot of extra work. Are they stipulated prices, or could we say?
Yeah, we've effectively just taken the price list from the supplier, just because we're not sure what the uptake's going to be anyway, but more than happy to review this list once we have a bit more of an idea what the volumes and uptake is.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. We're passing on the cost for the cost of the item. So obviously different items are going to be made up of different components which have different value.
Yeah.
And some obviously have some componentry which is bagged and the cost to dispose of, as well as componentry that's has some value in terms of the recycling piece. I think for ease, we can probably look at what our website actually looks like and how we explain it, potentially with some photographs, because somebody might not know what the difference between a CRT TV and a reproduction TV is, and make it nice and easy for people to actually understand. But what we weren't wanting to create is a situation where someone's subsidising the amounts because they take up TV there, and it'll all come out in the wash ultimately. But and so we're looking at covering the transport on this and just passing through the actual recycling cost in the first instance, and we'd look to have a review of that in about 18 months' time, or in line for another round of fees and charges setting. If we are seeing that we're not getting how the actual progress is against and item numbers are against this, we could look at that. But otherwise, if that is the direction, we can group these.
I just thought for some of them, it's easy to separate them, like lots of those small things, the difference between $4 and $6.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one person's getting it $1 cheaper and one person's paying $1 more is not a big deal. And you could quite easily separate rear projection and flat screen screens. Just in terms of people looking, it's quite a lot to go through. Yeah.
Just looking at the practicalities of it, how are we going to monitor? I mean, if somebody turns up with a TV screen on the back of the trailer and then they go to the office and say, I've got a TV screen, that's cool. But what happens if they pull up to the tip and biff it over the side into the big heap? How do we stop that sort of, what's the plan?
That's always a risk with anything, and people do have a choice of how they dispose of things. Ultimately, we would like to see people utilise the recycling schemes we have in place. It's just like anybody can put their recycling into the red bin if they choose to. It's around good messaging and then being encouraged to do the right thing in terms of there's actually a way of dealing with this material that's safe and the best outcome for the community, not filling up landfill. But ultimately, there is the risk of that. So there would be either obviously a conversation on site and education that we do have the scheme, and then the potential of that gets pulled out and put into the scheme anyway.
Surely most of the very good people in Central Otago will do the right thing. Of course they do.
Quinton, would there be any chance in, say, Tibet and Minneototo that you could take stuff to the service centre for smaller things like the mice and the smaller items so that staff there could charge them and it could go in a box that could then get brought up to Alex?
Yeah, we could always do that through the transfer station as well.
Yeah.
It's possible. We just have the containers available at Alexandra and Cromwell, and it was always our intent to introduce in the future at those sites. Obviously, the volume of material we get through there is low, but if we add 10% of the recommendation to explore and implement, just so we don't have to pay back the fees and charges again for those sites, we can definitely look at having something in place, because we do have obviously Enviro NZ vehicles coming to and from those sites back to our site, so it would only be a matter of having somewhere safe to store that material. So
yeah, and the only reason I was saying the service centre over the landfill was because of they've only got one little container there with the person in, and if there would be enough room versus at the service centre, you know, I mean, obviously if it got collected regularly, if there would be more space, but just.
I guess the risk is that someone tries to bring a TV into the centre or different things like that, or also pretty constrained on space and different things like that. So I'm sure we could look at a covered bin or something like that for those sites and actually expand the recommendation to implement at the Renfrew and off the transfer stations when a suitable collection options made available or something like that, just to be able to do that.
Neil?
Just a couple of things. I concur with His Worship. I hope we do take advantage of this opportunity to recycle and do the right thing and don't just stick it in the hole. A flat panel TV.
Careful,
flat panel TV at $21. And a CRT computer monitor and an LCD, just try to work out the difference between a computer LCD and a flat panel TV, because a LCD flat panel TV, it seems a big difference. So just make the observation. And I'm guessing that there's going to be something that says that when we take lots of drills and those sort of things, that rechargeable batteries that are attached to them are out of them. They don't go away, they get done separately.
So we have the battery recycling scheme.
Yeah, and they will be separated, and people will be told, hey, you've got a battery. Yeah, okay, cool.
But they'll be going to the same place anyway. It's the
Oh,
battery
okay.
recycling.
Oh, so it could stay in there.
Yeah, so it's not.
It's like the gun industry, when we take the ammunition out of the magazine, people turned up and they the gun up was loaded in.
Farmers.
No, not farmers.
The only thing missing from the list is cell phones. Do we take cell phones?
So, yeah.
Yeah, we do actually also have cell phone recycling. I think it's run through the same company. It is free, so it's already implemented at our service centres and libraries. So
So there's a wee cardboard box with a hole in it that you can drop them at libraries, service centres across the district.
Is it? Sure.
People are utilising that. You can look through your drawers and find
Everything
it.
iPhone 6 is in there.
They do actually fill up quite quickly. We get a box back to send away quite regularly. It's,
Was it the Nokia?
They don't build phones to lunch anymore.
Must have one of them somewhere. I don't do them, right?
An iPhone 6, if they 5, you'd find a 6 is good.
Any other questions?
Wonder you've got a Motorola brick, see?
Okay, so
I have a brick on how to be doing.
did you want to amend the recommendation of the chat and Roxburgh River?
yeah, I think just adding and Roxburgh and Ranfurly transfer stations with a suitable storage or
Is,
yeah. And look, we've been working with like the mini shed and that to do the battery recycling, drop-offs and different things like that. So I think there's definitely opportunity to put something in place, quite easily for those two sites.
So Wayne, have you got that?
Yeah, I'm just writing.
No. As it stands, the recommendation is A, that receives the report and accepts the level of significance. In B,
I'm thinking we might write it up as a C. So
Oh, okay.
B is same. and then we'll just write it in.
Additional.
okay, so B would be approves the amendment of the to the environmental services 2023-24 fees and charges schedule to introduce an electronic waste collection at the Alexandra and Cromwell waste transfer stations. And C,
So that's what I got so far. Note to the separate system for Roxburgh and Ranfurly transfer station will be operational with a suitable services available. That's all.
is everybody okay with that? Okay. So do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Martin and Sarah. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, carried.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. And now we're on to voting. Stu.
Well, welcome everybody. 24.1.5, Cornish Point Road, and welcome Paul. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. I'll take this report as read. So there was a original decision in June 2021 around the sealing of Cornish Point Road using some unsubsidised funding from other unsuccessful applications in Whakataki for some capital projects. That decision was made following the Lake Dunstan Cycle Trail opening that May. Obviously, it was a little bit chaotic at the start, given 7,000 to 7,500 people expected and 84,000 users using it in the first year, and that was 56,000 from the May to the December piece. So we had vehicles parking in all sorts of places to ride the trail, and sort of blocking access and different things along Cornish Point Road. So following that, council through remetling the road, put a turnaround area for truck and trailers to enable metling the road, which also now serves as a parking area at the end of that location, which has helped alleviate some of the pressure faced there, as well as that management implemented around parking at this point and encouraging people to make use of the Backburn Inlet and the parking area, private parking area on Backburn Road. So both of those things together have certainly helped alleviate that. And then trail numbers since that sort of 2021 implementation. So 2022 saw 71,000 people pass the counter, and in 2023, 56,000 people passed the counter. So basically the same numbers between 2021 and 2023, but there was 5 months less back in 2021. So there is obviously less people going past that counter as a result. And then over the Christmas break, we put out traffic counters and had traffic counts across the years as well. As part of that, as well as doing some observations of that car park. And as you can see from the figures in the report, I mean, in quite a peak area on a lovely day, biking past myself, photo, there was 2 vehicles in there. And I think we set a couple of bike paths as well and noted a maximum of 4 vehicles over the Christmas break. And the traffic counter at that period had an average daily traffic count of 147. The trigger for sealing in our development standards is 100 vehicles per day on average. But if you think we did that over probably one of the busiest periods of the year, if you were to actually traffic count across the year, that average would likely decrease quite significantly. So it's our recommendation, given that information and sort of that change in use and actually monitoring it, that decision to seal Cornish Point Road is rescinded.
Thank you very much for a in-depth report. Questions, anyone?
It's just, it's been mentioned to me that, you know, costs are going up all the time. So if we don't do it now, it's just going to be more expensive in the future. So.
The likely future development and actually reaching that trigger point along that section of road is reasonably unlikely. There's no actual properties directly fronting the road within, say, 100 metres of the road triggering an eco seal for dust suppression or anything like that. So dust is unlikely to be a contributing factor or effect on any residents. And yeah, the development potential along there is low. So it's unlikely to reach that point.
Nigel, were you chipping in there?
Yeah, thanks, Stu. Just with the consideration of the impact of the bike trails, once the trail goes through to Gibbston and then runs back along Felton Road, which is a very important road, as you all know, it's just that the is consideration being given to the impact on the car parks around the Bannockburn Bridge, because I don't know what the anticipated numbers are that will come through from Gibbston, but there's clearly going to be more pressure on car parking and traffic movement through Bannockburn and around the Bannockburn Bridge, especially once that trail is completed. And I just don't know how that hasn't been considered in terms of this particular proposal, which seems to be based primarily on the number of bikes going, but it clearly affects the available car parking and also increased traffic movement.
Yeah, so that is something hot on our radar around particularly the Queenstown League, given its use of Falcon Road and that and surrounding, looking at what our signage actually is around that and looking at early interventions and potential parking. So there's some road reserve area on Felton Road further down where the trail departs Felton Road that could become a small kind of in those sort of situations as well. I think the introduction of more trails potentially has, apart from a sort of concentration around the Bannockburn piece, which we need to consider, will potentially actually spread usage across the network as opposed to a new trail out of the blue, so to speak. There's not really other offerings like that and really attracting a lot of people to that point. I think is a different consideration, but we've been having conversations with the cycle trail group around what effect it will have around the Felton piece around Bannockburn and what we need to do to prepare the eventuality of obviously pretty hot demand for that trail.
Thank you.
Just want to clarify with you, QP, the threshold for sealing the road, and it may be my old ears, but I thought you said 100 vehicles a day, but it's 150, and that's averaged over the year. So planning at 147 in the busiest time is going to be way lower over the year, so that's good. Just for me, in our current financial climate, if somebody wants to give me 400k back, I'm pretty damn happy about it.
Yeah, and one question for me, that was sealing rather than eco sealing. So if we did have to look at even car park area, turnaround area, could in time, if there was an issue of dust or something, it's eco seal. Right, any other questions, anyone? Right.
I'll move that.
Move that, question recommendations. Oh, my computer's gone again, was A and B, is it?
Yes, baby.
A and B.
Receives the report.
Second, Tamer will second, I'll receive the report, Tamer will second it, and all those in favour? Carried. Tracy, let's do the next bit, because my computer's gone blank.
Okay, so. So item 24.1.19. Objection to the road.
Yes.
Oh, well, it's
I'll take this report as read. So under our road policy, there's a certain process to follow around road closures and for events. And so the event is advertised, and if there is objection, the parties work with around making suitable arrangements for their access during that event, or come to a solution. And if that can be gained, that objection is removed. If that objection is upheld, then it goes to the road committee, which is no longer, and it now comes to council. So a party objected to the Cromwell Street Spin student needing to gain access during the event to retrieve some furniture from the storage facility here. The organiser of the event has worked with that party to ensure they have access throughout the event, but just might have a wait period between races. Unfortunately, that was not a suitable arrangement for them, but have since noted that they do not want to be a part of this objection, but haven't actually noted to us of the removal of the objection. Hence, it is still being brought before you today, but our recommendation is council considered the objection but approves the temporary road closure, because we believe that the organising the party is making more practical arrangements to ensure access throughout the event for that property.
All right, I'll just take it on there. Questions?
I've got one. It might be for you and it might be for Peter. I just wondered, if we give authority for a road closure that enables an event to go ahead that doesn't comply with regular traffic law, does the organiser hold all the responsibility, or do we hold any residual liability for the activities that the road closure enables?
Through you, Chair, there is standard health and safety and legal requirements that must be met for any road closure event, and to be the organisers and their submission and their planning for this. They have to prove to our team that they can meet the requirements.
Yep, they've got barrier protection and traffic seats and everything like that, but there is, it is written that you can basically go outside the normal law if it is actually closed off to being enabling around motorsport events. There is some legality around that, but I just can't talk to that off the top of my head. I know I have read it around the fact that if the closure will enable events outside normal road conditions and use around outside normal road conditions. So we've time around that, and I'm happy to share that with you.
I'd be interested to know, which I guess also, not just motorsport, would also include things like people riding on trailers down the main road for the Blossom Festival or whatever.
Yeah, and there's a number of motorsport events throughout Central Otago that use our local roads, in terms of the hill climbs or other motorsport events throughout the district. Yeah.
I just like the idea of Marge going down there with his radar gun and giving them all tickets. What a novel event, wouldn't it? I got surprised because I don't think you were talking about this, no? Any other questions? No?
Am I missing something? This person wants to move some furniture out of a furniture lot. They can get in and out between races when they need to. On the one day of the year, I'm not missing anything here, am I?
No.
I'll move recommendation A, B, and C.
Like you said, you can say that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any boys?
Thank you, Stu, Community Vision and Experience. Tamer.
Thank you. We move to page 52 of our agenda for the open spaces naming policy. With Maria and Gordon, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. In the council's November meeting, Gordy and I presented the draft open spaces naming policy for approval, and the report was left on the table following a little bit of discussion around the legislation that council must comply with when making decisions around reserve naming. So as requested in November, we have updated the open spaces naming policy to note the specific sections of the legislation that underpin this policy. So the updated policy is attached as appendix 1 on page 54 of the agenda, and all the changes have been highlighted in yellow. So the naming policy is subject to section 16, subsection 10 of the Reserves Act 1977. And this section states that council may from time to time, by notice in the Gazette, declare that the reserve shall be known by such name as is specified in the notice. And may, in a like manner, we may change the name of the reserve. So we've looked for an example in the Gazette to give you an idea of how this type of notice might be worded. And found a notice from 19 years ago when Anderson Park was classified. So it says Gazette Notice 2005-782. It's classified the reserve for recreation, and it's declared the land to be known as Anderson Park, subject to the Reserves Act. So when the reserve is gazetted, that's often when the purpose of the reserve is established. So in this case, recreation reserve. And at that point, we often, this is when we set out the name. So Anderson Park, that's the formal name. So Section 4 of the Conservation Act requires that the Act shall be interpreted and administered so as to give effect to the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. And that's relevant because the Reserves Act is one of the acts contained in the first schedule of the Conservation Act. So that means that as an administrating body, we must consult with and have regard to the views of iwi and hapu before undertaking actions and making decisions on our reserves. And then very importantly, the Central Otago District Council also has a partnership agreement with Okapa. So this is another consideration. When we were drafting this document with consulted with Okapa, and we've taken on board their point of view, and by doing this, we've upheld our obligations under legislation and our agreement with Okapa. That's it really. Is anybody to add?
Any questions?
One, and it might be me being thick, there's every chance of it. But the second paragraph of renaming of existing open spaces, council reserves the ability to rename an open space in the future on the grounds of discrimination or behaviour from a subject that is otherwise harmful to the wider community well-being. I couldn't understand that, so I was wondering if you could give me an example to help me understand it. What could happen, what it could mean. I just
Cromwell's named after Oliver Cromwell, and people object to him wanting to change the name. What I named.
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
That stuff where people will be cutting things down.
Right, so it's something that becomes no longer like the.
School underneath.
Yes.
The Dixie checks out. There's no longer known as, because you know that's a Dixie.
Okay, thank you.
It's just a safeguard in there for. We're not saying there's any of those in this district, but who knows?
Well.
Snowflakes and what.
No, we don't. No.
Same as a good example as well.
Thank you.
Right, if there's no further questions.
Yeah, I just wonder if we're making a one for our back by saying that under the dual naming part, that the TRO name will be first. Now, there's a lot of stuff happening nationally about that. Just wonder if we should leave it so we can do either or that's appropriate for the particular area. If we want to tie ourselves to, that's how we want to be using the dual name. And I don't know what the situation would be.
And I
may or may not be appropriate, but
that too. Although when you're reading it again, it's dual naming is not for every part.
No.
So you would anticipate that dual naming is for a purpose that the site is significant to Māori, in which case maybe it should be first.
Yeah, I just wonder if I'd hate to be sitting here and go, the policy says we must, but there's actually some logic and common sense that says it's not appropriate and no one's disagreeing. We've got a policy that says we have to. That's all I'm concerned about.
Thoughts?
I would love to jump in. So I've done a wee bit of thinking around this. And I guess there's a few points to make here. So first of all, I just want to point out that we are not talking about naming government agencies, but I do understand the link and it's easy for our minds to go there. But we are speaking about reserves in our district only. The other point that I'd like to make is that if we are going to have a name gifted to us by Ōkaha, it's not necessarily going to be a direct translation of the word, and so it could be an insult, or it would be an insult likely to, it's important that that name does go first, and it's not always, there's not always going to be a translation, so.
Do you anticipate then that a dual naming situation would generally arise in our area because we have been gifted a name for that space?
Exactly, suggest so. And I think it's like, wouldn't like to call it convention, but we have, met our Clutha River this next door, that our comes first in that name, and then you've got Ōrākei Mount Cook. Example of how that worked.
The Clutha River is the Clutha River, but it's the other way around, yes. Again, but done with legislation, so. Yeah. Thanks for that bit about gifting, because that's actually important, but there's no mention of the Reo name being gifted in the policy. So I think that would be important to have that, because then it gives some context. And where it's a gifted name, that's a given. I get that. And it's just not mentioned, so. Because I think that will give us some context to me.
Would you put that in that
I think
final bullet point? When a Reo name is gifted for an open space, it is.
Because it's 100% correct. If that's the case, and we take it, it would be potentially an insult to reverse it.
Because currently it reads that we're going to go through and rename all our reserves and open spaces. Some people could take that conclusion.
Could they?
I didn't make
that.
Well, some people rename existing open spaces.
No, so this does, it's not about this policy, it doesn't say that we're going to go and rename all of our open spaces, but it does give council that opportunity to do that if the need arises for whatever reason that might be. There's a few reasons. For example, if we decided that there was a name that became in place that for whatever reason is insulting, or it could be named after someone, and we might decide that they're not the best way to represent our district, or whatever trace them out. But your name will go past council again, so it goes to council for approval. That's.
If we look at that last bullet point, if we amended it, say when dual naming is gifted for an open space, the Reo Maritime position.
It's to be tied in between the Te Reo Māori names of above it and dual naming. Because where a Te Reo name is gifted for a space, it may not result in dual naming. It may just result in having a bit of a name for a space. So maybe we could, I don't know how you would.
Yeah, bullet points in there.
And I've got one more, just because the mayor likes to be picky, so I'm following his lead.
Thank you. Sometimes something good.
Gosh, did I really say that out loud? On page 58, we've got the relevant legislation, what we refer to being the Local Government Act and the RMA and the Reserves Act. But in the start of the report at the scope, we only make a reference to the Reserves Act, and I'm wondering if under the scope, is there any need for we've expanded on the Reserves Act there. Is there anything in those other 2 acts or 3 acts of different years that should go in the scope as well, or not?
Well, so typically at the end of every policy, we do list the relevant legislation, and we don't necessarily expand on exactly why they're relevant. And the idea of that is we're just trying to keep the policies short and readable.
So this one here, we're given the scope to show why the Reserves Act's relevant, but we don't. You're saying we don't need to do that for the LGA or the RMA.
So we did that there was a request, but
No, it's typically this is the Reserves Act function.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's not Reserves Act, you're naming reserve, you're not naming it under Local Government Act or Conservation Act or.
All right, no, I'm happy. If it doesn't work out right, it'll be found out when we do the reviews.
All right.
And of course, read it out.
So in terms of that final bullet point, have you got anything in this? I just wonder whether it would be an additional in the recommendations and whether it's something along the lines of where a te reo, as a bullet point, where a te reo name is gifted for an open space and the space is to have a dual name, the te reo name is first.
Yep. Yeah.
Again, slowly.
So where a te reo name is gifted for an open space.
Yep.
And the space is to have a dual name.
Yeah.
The te reo name is first.
Yeah.
As a C.
Is it, just clarifying, when you go to that page 59, is that, you're invited to propose a name? What's the difference between proposing and gifting here? Just so that it's clear to people who are coming down there. Is there a difference between proposing and gifting?
It's got a significance there, isn't it?
Slash gift.
Well, proposing and gifting is quite different.
Would that be, proposing, would be the like that highlights there a sponsorship arrangement, like Contact Energy Park or whatever it be?
So if my family gift a name, is that just what we want to do?
Well, I'm just wondering, there's in here, we talk about proposing a name, which is pretty straightforward, but gifting a name, in what circumstances are we making no distinction between proposing and gifting, or is gifting something?
Maybe, yeah, well, maybe that just, because if propose, invite to propose a name, we invite them to propose a name, they will come back and gift a name. So, I mean, that's the first time. We would wish you to propose a name. When they come back and say, okay, well, we've come up with a name, we'll get it for you to use. I mean, maybe the names can be expanded in there, but it's slightly two different things. It is, but we're seeking them to propose and then they will come back and go.
So what would kick that off?
So say Riverside Park, the BCB's doing, the BO Park area, I'm sure it was their part of that.
Yeah.
We would say to Mana Whenua, what would you like to call that? And they might say, whatever, and it'd be cool. Great, thank you. We appreciate that gift. And then that would be the Te Reo Park. And then underneath may well be Alexandra Riverside Park.
Yeah.
Which one will stand for it? I think that would be mine, does it?
And then the proposed names would be like the green space and development at Clyde, they might propose that it's called.
Yeah. So is road in an open space, like we had a subdivision in a park on there, or, play centre or playground or.
Yes, yeah.
Fair enough.
There is some.
Could we move C into B? To say adopts open spaces management policy 2024 with the following amendments at the park.
We sure can, if that makes life easier for you, right?
I think it does.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. It's so good, I'd like to move it.
Marvellous, thank you, Neil. Would anybody like to second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sally. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Success. We've now moved to page number 60 with our obviously rosy economic development report. On that,
If we're going to allow.
You remember the rose became from?
I think it's pronounced rosé.
Lunchtime.
Thank you, Nick.
I can carry that optimism through this session, but hey, this is my regular update to council. Every 6 months I come through and provide an update on the work plan. This process started out during COVID, and carried it on. And essentially the annual work plan now falls out of our economic development strategy. My reports always cover, and the report is the recommendation is that the report be received. My reports cover a bit of an economic update. And I guess, in a nutshell, domestically and abroad, central banks are trying to, get this rate of inflation under control. So they're increasing cash rates, which then flow into interest rates. And governments are reducing spend as well. And so 2024 has been predicted to be a tough year, somewhat. And, you know, with that, they're predicting these interest rates, sort of high interest rates to hang around this year. Treasury are sort of predicting about a 1.5% growth rate in GDP, which is quite a bit lower than what it has been on average over the last 20 odd years. And then, you know, we've got some trading partners like China, their consumption's down too, which is going to affect home exporters. So that's probably the not so rosy part. I guess the uptake is really the high levels of immigration. People coming in and relieving some of those staff shortages we've seen around the country, also adding to domestic consumption as well. And we're getting a return of the international visitors and international students as well. So some of those sectors are starting to pick back up. How's Central Otago performing? I hear you're all asking in your heads. It's a hard one to sort of sum up, but really I would look to what's happening in that employment space. And if we looked at the September quarter last year to 12 months earlier, we've added about 680 filled jobs in the district. That's about a 5.2% rise in employment, which is really strong. The December quarter has just come out, and that was a 5.3% rise in the previous December quarter. So those indicators are really good. If we look to the other side, the unemployment side, in November, MSD had about 69 job seekers on their books in November, which is it's about what the historic number has been, but obviously also always room for improvement. The district's population is growing as well, so 2.6% over the last 12 months, which is a really national average for. In terms of what I've been doing for the last 6 months, some of the key areas to note in that workforce space is the Central Mahi seasonal recruitment platform has been back up and running. That's helping employers find seasonal staff and seasonal staff connect with employers. We've got a life in Central Otago videos that are just about to be released. And so this is how employers who are recruiting from outside of the district convey what life is like within Central Otago. In terms of the other spaces, you may have seen some of the recent media attention around the project to commercialise more of the fruit waste in the district. So that's sort of successfully into the third stage, which is where we get commercial partners to work together and work on a project, and that's where council starts to step back from our role in it and businesses take over and go forward. Probably still support, but then leading it. Regional economic development, so the 6 councils in Otago collaborate on regional economic development. Sort of 3 projects there. One of the newer ones is looking at productivity of our primary sector in the district, just to understand how, as a region, our productivity of the primary sector compares against others. And that's kind of the first step in sort of understanding are there opportunities or spaces here to lean into to improve that productivity. And wouldn't be amiss without sort of mentioning the change of government. You'll be well aware of the changes that means to council work plans, and they do flow through into economic development as well. So obviously the Lake Onslow project and more recently, right, for the Regional Skills Leadership Group have ceased. And so I think a couple of items that have come off my work plan. Going forward, in the report I mentioned the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which is a national initiative looking at helping youth get into employment. We applied for some funding and just recently been told that that funding application has been successful. So that's something that we look to be standing up very quickly. And that role is to get youth who aren't in employment, who are not at school, they're not in training, into employment. And that application was very well supported by the local youth trusts and MSD alike. So that'll be work in progress. And then in the labour market also, every 3 years, we support the industry to do horticulture and viticulture labour market survey. So that's just understanding the needs of how that is going to grow in terms of future plan fundings. So that's something that we're going to start to work on there and see if the same partners want to be involved in understanding that. Digital connectivity project, there'll be a report from the council for discussion on, hey, where do we go to next with this? That's basically looking at, wow, how well is the district connected in terms of digitally? What could be done to improve it? And what would be the benefit of doing that? So that'll be a future discussion. And then last but not least on my list is the economic development strategy, which is up for renewal. So we will be reviewing that and updating that over this 6 months, but also the plan to have a final draft of council by the end of this calendar year. And in the past, we've used sort of consultants to help with that, but like with the budget constraints, there'll be a bit more time involved. So that'll be what I'll be working on. So that's kind of my update. I can be what Rosé.
Sorry, just before we jump into questions, I do want to acknowledge the work Nick put into the Fruit Loss project. So of course, we're seeing the results now in the media events. Fantastic. This project's been years and a huge amount of effort by Natural Green Partners to the table throughout the various stages of the project. So great that it's been celebrated now, but we're talking years of work to bring this to fruition. Excuse me.
Absolutely, lovely.
I just wanted to confirm what you said about funding being applied for from the Task Force for Jobs to undertake the pilot to get youth not in employment, educational training into employment. Did you say you've got the funding for this?
Yeah, we've just found out.
Yeah, because often it's hard for you at that stage that don't have a history of work.
Yeah, I mean, that's a critical stage for you. Yeah. And if you look at the benefits to a community long term, if you can intervene at that stage and get them into employment, then that's.
Be really interested to see how that's going. Yeah.
Right, stay tuned.
Great. Any other questions?
No, just on the agricultural side, it's no good. And China's having a major impact on that. You talk about youth wages for minimum wage and youth wages for the cost of them. It'd be very hard to get a lot of guys and kids into agriculture because it costs too much to have them with experience in machinery and staff. But banks have got no appetite at the moment to extend overdrafts. There's a real backload of getting stock killed at meatworks, and basically China's not buying product, and as a result, possibly a lot of by tensions with Australia and China, or the backlash of that, the live export cattle game. So agriculture, I'm going to say now, in the next 18 months to 2 years, will be at its all-time low going into that.
Yeah, I'll agree, Stuart. It's definitely one of the sectors that I watch and worry about.
Yeah, the community aspect, especially like an African and Kiwi or even in here, is that the aspect of that is quite frightening. Where the stress levels involved with those businesses, and we're talking from the top end to the bottom end, transports to electricians and all those guys doing it is actually quite dangerous really going forward. And I think too, probably hopefully as we've been bright light on the dairy side, the milk price picking up will help because it's a big contributor to this, whether it be calf grazing or selling product into it. But for the next 18 months, we get one industry that is really on its knees. And I think we should be really careful watching it. Well, yeah, we can't do anything about it, but other than that, it's big important.
And it will be interesting to get your thoughts on this report too, that does look at the productivity of the sector, what options there may be to raise that too.
Yeah. Right.
The co-working space.
Yes.
And the lack of a commercial lead at the moment.
Yep.
Are any other councils around the area doing it well that we could emulate?
So there's different ways that you can sort of intervene or make something happen, right? And with our role in this one has been very much about sort of connecting and bringing together partners rather than investing and delivering the space. So there definitely are examples where other councils have invested in space to deliver that. But really, the way that Jim I operate in budget constraints is just trying to bring people together to make sure that they understand the demand there and connected with the potential occupants, that they know where the potential spaces are to be rented, and with connected with other co-working spaces in the region as well, to basically take some of those systems on board. So, yeah, really, we're just keeping an eye out. Someone take commercial lead on that.
Just for you, there are a number of co-lab spaces, obviously in the Wellington region and Upper Hutt in particular, and they've never really recovered after COVID. And a number of very successful ones had to close.
Another thing, which I don't know if we've got any aspect in, and I know the fruit guys get it, and we probably get it here at council too, is the compliance that we get in agriculture, duplicating compliance. And to give an example, I got a letter from MPI, not MPI, Osprey the other day, some truck tallies were wrong on the truck, and it came right back through the original system. And I'm going, well, I rang them up and talked to them. And they go, oh, well, if you think you've sent the right number of sheep on the truck, then that's all good. Talk to your agent and talk to the transport. I said, well, why did I get a compliance email from Osprey? And when it got as simple as what it was, I knew exactly what the problem was. The 200 sheep were lambs. The 25 sheep that are in lambs until they'd legally cut their bottom teeth are a hogger, but they're legally determined as a lamb on the computer, and the mutton were the 25 muttons. But I said, well, if I wrongly filled out an animal declaration form, therefore I'm liable for false information. Oh, and I just talked to your transport. So where we were, why, if that's the case, why isn't the transport ringing? So I think the compliance is coming down for all businesses, and that's what will affect wages and people employing people. Because actually that part of it is too tough. Whether it's testing for water at a council level, that sinking lid of compliance is really going to affect the next 10 years of business in my opinion.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what the new government brings in that space.
Thank you. Looking to have someone move that the report be received. Please. Thank you, Stuart, and seconded. Thank you, Cheryl. For those in favour, against. Yeah. Very much.
Thank you, Nick and Dylan. Thank you, Tame. And that takes us to page 65, a report on the housing policy, preferential purchasing and the next steps in this work. Louise and Saskia, welcome.
Good morning, councillors. This page here is a report that is addressing two outstanding actions from, nearly 18 months ago. So we did give you a little summary here just to really refresh memory. So I'll give the sort of picture of the sector. We did discuss that way back in August because it's a very broad resolution, and at the time we didn't sort of nail it down and get clarification as to what you would like to see as an output from that. It was left as a action, and no further work has happened on it. However, we have heard from the Central Otago Housing Group this morning, and what we're recommending is obviously not to impede that work in the slightest, but if we were to close off the action today and have the work that's occurring as part of the work that Rebecca's involved come separately up to council and address that resolution that way. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you've asked us to look into some preferential purchasing for council-led development. So Louise and I have had a good think about this, and one of the challenges we've had, which we had when we've been talking about this housing work and the housing trust work, was who would actually get these houses, which is a real challenge without having a housing needs assessment and actually having a really good understanding of who you would want to have this preferential purchasing for. However, in the absence of having that housing assessment, which would put us as to put it into the long-term plan, what we do know is that first-time buyers in New Zealand do struggle to compete in the open market. So what we are proposing here for your consideration is a system whereby with PRAD and the Pines development, that staff would work with the developer, and essentially first-time buyers would get preferential purchase sort of in front of the queue, and we had a process where there'd be a legal undertaking they had to sign to prove that they've never owned a home, and they were going to be living here in Central Otago. So that's what we have for your consideration today. Thank you for the other week. All your questions.
Just a couple of things to note. This seems quite a long time for not a lot having happened. Just reminding you that there is a policy now on delivering different housing typologies. So that's piece of work that was done, and also the resolution around exploring funding opportunities, which we've had a few goes at with little success. The other comment I'd like to make in the recommendation C, there's a word missing. And in the last line, it should say, and to deliver streamlined consenting processes. That's just dropped off somewhere. So that's acknowledged that we do have a role to play around the district plan, zoning and provision of appropriate objectives, but also in the consenting process, we aim to help people try to get housing and
All right, councillors, thoughts and questions, please. Stu.
In this page here, page 66 report, saying that the first home buyers are struggling. Evidence of telling and banks and everything, they are the biggest now movers in the housing market. So in that 2 years, a lot of these things have changed, and I don't know why. I guess how a lot of the evidence in towns are in place. And I guess one of the biggest things was why I totally agree it's very hard to get into housing. I looked at valuations of some properties the other day, and the Minnetonka have doubled in the last 2 years. So what we did in 2022, those houses were still been out of reach today. And until we have a reset on the valuation of some of these houses, how are we ever going to get a system? The government valuation of some of the properties in the Minnetonka have doubled in the last 2 years, really much. So no matter what we do, I'm just feeling that we're never going to catch the bottom step of the ladder. And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to do something. I totally agree.
we totally understand that.
Yeah.
This isn't so much about the affordability of the price of the house. This is around the preferential opportunity.
No, just Tuesday, I came up 7.5 years ago. This was the biggest thing I saw on my radar, and it's the biggest thing ever since. And on the one hand, I can look and go, is this it? On the other hand, I can look and go, a system that's completely, no small council is going to change the system. Going to change the fact that we've had a 30% population increase in that same 7.5 years. We are influencing as much as we can, but we can't fix the problem. And I see this as being a small bit of influence. And the biggest thing I see about it is there's no harm. There's no loss of income to anybody in it. It's just giving a bit of an opportunity to those who fall into the category very firmly of the have-nots, when it could be argued, and I see the word market manipulation there, could be argued that the market's manipulated very much in favour of the haves. That's life. I don't have a problem with it because it doesn't cause any harm, and I'm slowly coming to the sad realisation to myself that whilst this may seem very little, it's probably the most we can do, and particularly the most we can do when we're looking at the rates rises that we've got coming our way and grand ambitions fall by the wayside alongside survival.
Can I just?
Tamer had a hand up. I'll come to you after Tamer.
Yes, I've lost my hand up things, but I'd like to talk to it. Yes,
with the areas that we've got available and the new debt to income ratios that have been released in the last couple of weeks around the threshold and us being in a low wage-ish economy here, do we think that first home buyers are going to be able to afford those properties? I hate for us, I agree with it, and I think that's a really good option. Will they be able to afford it?
Probably not. Don't know. Some will, some won't. This won't necessarily solve that problem. It might solve around the preferential thing. So if they can afford, they get a crack-in against somebody else who has a house already or wants to come from Auckland and use it as a holiday house or a second or third house. It just gives the preferential situation.
Yeah.
Nigel?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I don't know if I agree with your comment, and to me, and the questions probably reflect this, I don't think we have got a clue that we know what we're talking about. And it sounds, everyone likes the idea of supporting first homeowners, but we don't know basic information about, for instance, what percentage of buyers at the moment in CODC are new home buyers. Do we know that information? I don't think so. And if we looked at on council-owned land house sales, I'm assuming that would mean if you took Gear Avenue Stage 2 as an example, every single unit that's being proposed to be built there eventually, seems to have been taking a long time, which is something like 87 or 90 units. If we apply that policy to it, that was all of giving preferential treatment to to an unknown segment of the potential buying population, that'll almost inevitably have a downward effect on prices. I just think we're sort of making a pious resolution in an area that we've got very little information about, and will have nothing, not even a symbolic effect on the actual housing market. And I do think there are solutions that council could be looking at in this area, but I don't know that I can support this resolution because I think it's probably symbolic but otherwise meaningless.
And it's still at the market rate, isn't it? It's not preferential pricing. No. It's just front of the line.
Yeah.
Oh,
you go, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, well, the only place we talk about at the moment, I assume, is Gear Avenue Stage 2 is the example of where such a policy would apply. So how would you actually implement it and apply it?
Would also apply to the remaining section in Alexandra, Dunstan Park. Yeah, and how we envisaged this was that we would get a market valuation, we would put out an expression of interest, and if it's not filled, then we go to the open market. If it's oversubscribed, we would then have some sort of ballot system. So it would definitely be a market valuation, and it would be just a pre-step being the expression of interest process.
But who's controlling the sale process? Real estate agent or council?
Who would run the process, a real estate agent or the council?
We haven't investigated the absolute detail on that, but whichever way is the most efficient.
And if it was to be the real estate agent, we would just have an agreement that they follow that process. And Councillor McKinley, just dealing with your concerns over sort of this sort of idea of the first home buyer. You're absolutely right. In the absence of that needs assessment, we don't know who would best benefit from preferential purchasing. A needs assessment, which Lou and I did think about, we think for the time it's going to take and for the cost to council and the delay it would have on Gear Ave, that wasn't going to benefit this particular report. Not to say that the separate work that it could be beneficial for that, and that's a separate conversation. But you're absolutely right, Nigel. We sat back and thought, in terms of preferential purchasing, what we know, this was the best option we come up with without that robust data. So we do take your point there around not having that robust data behind this proposal.
And to add to that, it would cost about 150,000 to do a needs analysis based on one done by me by council. And if it was to throw up that every section of the market is struggling with affordability, so new home buyers, professional people, young families, split relationships, all of those, we still have the same problem of determining who goes first, and that would probably vary around the most need, but we don't have enough land to solve all the problems for everybody. So it's a bit of a quick throw something together to try and meet an area that we know is an issue.
Sorry, I'll just have one last comment. I just don't accept it. There might be some places in Alex, but Gear Avenue is a good example. If you have control of the process and you go out to the market and say all 90 odd titles or sections in this subdivision, we're going to give preferential treatment to first home buyers, you're going to affect the prices of the market. So I just don't think it's been thought through. There are various models the council could do with Gear Avenue. From we can do what we did with Gear Avenue Stage 1, or we could become more involved in the sale process. But by putting that condition as a blanket condition when you go to market, you'll affect the price in the marketplace absolutely, and you'll depress it.
Just before I come to Neil, Nigel, I want to test that. So if the so 20 sections are bought by a developer and as one of the conditions is this, then the developer looks at the land and goes, each of these sections, whatever size they are, is worth 495,000 each. That's the market value. That's what I'm willing to sell them at. They then go out for 3 or 4 weeks where first home buyers get first dibs at it. And if they don't front up, then it goes on the market still at 495. I don't understand how this would change the value. I think if it was an auction and it was only first home buyers, that'd be a different story, but the price is being determined and then it's just who gets to pay that price first, isn't it?
Yes, and if I could add
Well,
to that.
Well, hang on, Louise is just adding to that.
So our process where we have entered into a joint venture arrangement with a developer is what we do is we get market valuation and we set a minimum price and we have we have an agreed minimum price, and in that situation we have gone to the market, and what we have found is when the market's hot we get above the minimum price and it's actually pulled back. So there is a peg in the sand on that market valuation. So the difference for this might be that that is the market valuation as opposed to, you know, being a little bit more in there of the market with the minimum valuation.
Did you have a response to that, Nigel? Could you hear that okay?
Yeah, I honestly, I just think that there are so many variables and such a lack of data that we have that we're putting something that we all agree about the intention of and support the idea of first home buyers being able to get into the market, but we just know so little. And Stu made the point initially. There was a headline saying, I can't remember the exact details, but the percentage of new home buyers from memory in the last 3 months of last year as a percentage of all sales went up significantly. And all that's saying is that the factors that drive the sale of new houses are factors that are well outside our control. And we because of the lack of data surrounding this proposal and this agenda item, we're in danger of voting for something and discovering when we actually try to apply it 6 or 9 or 12 months or 18 months down the track, that we've got unintended consequences that we don't know about by definition, and it's because of a lack of information about the housing market, which is highly complex. And I just don't think it, and for the potential effect on the overall market, it's just not worth the candle. Yeah, if we want to do something about housing, so that I mean there are other things.
If it goes out and we put it out there for first home buyers for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it be, and we don't get any, then we've tried it and the sections are still sold on the open market, and it doesn't cost us $150,000 now for a needs assessment to gather that data. It costs us 3 or 4 weeks of time.
Neil's been waiting very patiently. I appreciate that, Neil. I just wanted to shut that track.
New Year's resolution on, mate. There's 2 sorts of buyers in this world: first home buyers and next home buyers. That's all the data I need. Because if you're already in the market, then you've already got a house, you own one. So it's quite simple, isn't it? It's the new home buyers. That's where the issue is. Yeah. And to me, that's supported by, I was benefited by the home ownership scheme by some government way back in the, God knows when, 80s, 90s, that gave me a whole lot of tax benefits and money for nothing, just sort of save some money with this in an account and went towards my first home. So I think the anecdotal evidence is there, the current evidence is there. That's the people that need to get into it. If you're in the market, they don't care about you. The key thing for this is that you've got to start somewhere, you've got to do something. And even if it's wrong, because it might miss some particular group, it's mostly right. It's got a group we know that needs some help and support. And if the new homeowners can actually already be afforded it, they'll be getting in. This is about just bringing the stuff to the market. In terms of how we sell them, it's an opportunity where we could contribute further by not using a real estate agent and paying them some cream for doing sod all. No disrespect to the real estate industry, but you're going to pay a huge commission, so you don't need to pay. Guess what? We'll just sell it. Yeah. We'll pay staff member to do it. it's going to be a lot cheaper. And that has the ability to reflect back on what they need to pay, and you can not interfere with the market by doing that. There's ways around it, I understand, that you can represent the fact that there's not a gifting, but recognition that there's no fees being paid and the true market value would have been X, Y, Z. And to Nigel's point about going forward and how it's going to affect the market, these number of sections aren't big enough to do that. The market is much bigger than just Gear or sections at Alexandra. So I don't think that that's going to be a blip. What I do know is if you don't try and get people in and give them first crack, and don't put any other controls in it on how it gets sold, someone's going to say, I'll buy off the plan and I'll flick it on and I'll make 10 or 20 grand in 6 months for doing nothing. And that should not happen with council land at the ratepayer's expense.
What if you're a first home buyer and you do exactly the same thing? You've used.
We can put things in place to make that, and
That's what's
to stop that from happening.
And the argument to that, you might-
Sorry, Neil, just say that again. I missed Neil's comment.
Which one?
About you put rules in place to stop new home buyers selling on.
Understanding of what the policy was intended to do was that we would make sure that there was a way of not enabling people to take the capital gain within a certain time period. The first home buyer.
I mean, you've just demonstrated what's wrong with this motion. We can't do things like that.
We can, but we're not. The thing that I've heard for however many years around this table is, when it comes to affordable housing or anything like this, is all the examples where it might go wrong, and we run a great risk of letting perfect get in the way of good here. And what that will achieve is we will wind up doing absolutely nothing, and we'll be handing off council-owned land to, as somebody, my grandmother said, people from Auckland who have come down and want to, no disrespect to people from Auckland, but I'd rather a first home buyer who more likely than not is going to buy it, they're going to treasure it for 10 years, they're going to build their family in it, and they're going to get a foothold, than somebody who's coming in who's already got 2, 3, one of my mates has got 8 bloody houses. I don't know why. I really think that perfect in the way of good in these examples where by crikey somebody might make $1 out of it. There's a lot of people who have got a lot of homes who are making a lot of money out of it. And if a first home buyer happens to, I'd be surprised. I think they'll just try to hold on to what they've got with both hands. Martin.
I take your comments earlier, Tim, about when you first were in the chair, it was a priority of this council to find some way of dealing with the affordable homes. I take it what our speaker said, the difference between affordable and attainable, right? I think as a council, we have to accept the fact that we have got little or no effect on the current housing market. With immigration the way it is, with duopolies as far as the provision of stuff we build houses out of, the Central Otago District Councils can do sod all. And I think that's the first thing we have to acknowledge, that really, in reality, we can't. This is a very simple way of using our dirt to get people into houses, get them started. You know, there's not an appetite around this table to go into any form of social housing or to take any looks at some of the tools which were used in the past, like councils doing leasehold land and things like that. I mean, we've canvassed that. There's not an appetite for it. You know, I support the recommendations because I think it's accepting the fact what we can do.
Thank you, Cheryl. Sorry, I missed you before, and you'll be Lindley.
No, that's okay. I've got 2 things. Firstly, I'm not sure I like the word quick fix. That always sort of rings a wee alarm bell that there's not been enough research, and that could bite us in the bum in the future. So then the other thing is the work that's already been done on, I'm just going to talk there, Avenue. Is that still going to be now relevant moving forward by utilising if we do agree to this?
Okay, so I'll comment on quick fix. It's what we mean by quick fix is that we haven't invested in a needs analysis, and we've had quite a lot of conversation and we've listened to recordings of meetings about what is the concern around the table around affordable housing, and we've heard a number of times this first home buyer situation. And if I can add to some of the comments, and this is definitely anecdotal, the young people I know, children of friends and people I know who have been trying to get into the market, and they do get into the market as first home buyers, and it is difficult, is that it's because they want to have a home and that they want to live here and they want to contribute and be a part of this community. And I guess if they sold to trade up to something better, they're still here. And I think that's what we were trying to capture in our conversations and what we've put into the report. In terms of theory, that work is all very good work and definitely still relevant to this situation. We are working on getting the infrastructure in now, so those plans that we have that have been adopted by the community board are good and current and relevant. So none of that is wasted. We are still thinking about bringing something back to you around there's another piece of work we don't think we've referenced in the report, but the work done on GEAR is good work in it as well.
Lindley.
I just struggle with the word preferential because there's so many young families and not so young families that are struggling in the current climate, and it sounds like we're giving a benefit to a small amount of people. Preferential people. Will it interfere with the market? How much will the cost be to other ratepayers to go through with it? No, that's what. Dark work probably only.
Limited amount. I don't think it's.
It is limited amount, although we might have a role in marketing and selling the houses if we don't put them out to a real estate agent, has been suggested here today. And we will consider that.
Probably a very small income stream.
Yeah.
I'll come to you in a moment, Stu, because Dylan's want to make something.
Sorry, so just throwing a couple of things again. I agree with Nigel's point before about lack of evidence. And so you said before when Peter was presenting about data over anecdotes, and we continue to talk about the need for a needs analysis. So to bring some relevance to this, today was just thinking the report from CoreLogic. In 2023, first home buyers in Central Otago made up just under 15% of the total market. So it's not a big part of the market, but it's a significant part. However, nationally, they were 26% of the market. So we are well behind the national average. Over in Queensland, it was pretty much exactly the same as us. So it's a regional issue, we know that, but we need the data, we need to invest in the data, whether that's with partners, as was presented this morning, to be able to understand the quantity and what solutions may be.
I think you had 2 points, Dylan, and then we'll come to you, Nigel.
Thank you.
Oh, that was it. Nigel.
Yeah.
Hang on, Nigel, hang on, start speaking again, Nigel, sorry.
I recall that data that we did commission as part of the housing work did show, for various reasons, that we, in terms of our demographics, we really were struggling sort of that 18 to sort of late 30s. So this may help in terms of encouraging, the younger families in terms of staying here in Central with something that we're thinking as well. And I know there's a lot of factors that are going on here in terms of uni and work opportunities, but we do know that there is an issue with age cohort as well. Not to say that's the only age that there'd be a first time buyer. Yes.
Thank you. Nigel, and then Stu.
I suppose, I'm fully supportive of what's driving the motion before us, but I just can't get away from the fact that it's nothing more than symbolic, and there are ways this council could be involved in the housing market, which is not the subject that we can discuss at this meeting. But what I do know is as soon as a house is sold, under whatever circumstances by council, on council land or whatever, you lose control of it and the market takes over. And so I'm struggling to vote against the motion, but I'm struggling to vote for it because it's sort of like a nothing, to me, it's a nothing motion. And if I looked at GEAR Avenue, what's more important is we know supply is the prime consideration behind getting more people into houses. And GEAR Avenue Stage 2 has been sitting there for 2 to 3 years, ready to press the go button. We haven't done it. And if you were asking what's the first order of business, it would be to get Gear Avenue onto the market. And so I'm sitting here sounding like Scrooge, thinking, how can I vote against what we all want first home buyers to get into houses, and the voice of reason saying, well, it's just a purely symbolic gesture that'll have no practical effect on the market whatsoever. So I'm conflicted.
Before I come to you, Stu, can I just clarify, this won't slow down Gear Avenue coming on the market? With this policy? Stu?
It's, well, I'm involved in the group looking at trying to just get housing in the Minnetonka. I look at a system like this and I agree totally with having to try to make it easy for people to get in. But the only developments you're going to have is in Alexandria and Cromwell and Clyde, doesn't fix the Tibet, doesn't fix the Minnetonka. And I don't know how we can do it fairly and equitable and who plays God. I did talk to Graham Bell about it a while ago, the same thing, is every time they had a development, 10 or 15% of the houses had to be for affordable housing or people in a whatever wage bracket or whatever. And they had to be living within that community. So they couldn't be in a corner of the community on their own, they had to be living amongst other people, and that was a way that they blended into the community and be not so much affordable housing, but obtainable housing. So there's a massive need out in our corner. There's a massive need in but the problem we've got is that you've got 15%. Anyway, so I've been looking at property values in our corner, they've gone up a lot. So even if you had that 15% ready to pull the trigger, then all of a sudden the ducks float down the river with the decoys, it gets too far away. And I don't know how you fix it. And our wages, and I'm first before the economic report to say our wages are too dear for a business to employ people. So the shearers that are down here most of the year in Australia are making $10,000 a week. They can probably afford to buy a house. But the young guy working for the contractor getting $26 and working 14, 15 hours, he can't. And I don't know how you fix it. I'd love to be able to fix it because they are our future. But like Tim said, he's got mates that are sitting on massive properties and people are speculating in their property industry in Central Otago because it is a place that is trending. Their own CEOs come down to one more part of heaven, but the reality, the reason he probably wanted to come is actually this is because of what we have done. So I don't know how we catch up with the council.
Quality of the council.
Oh, it was.
One or two exceptions.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. But I mean, unless you do, I agree with the concept. There's going to be 15% of these have got to be offered to the market. And if they're going to do that, they have to register something. First home buyer want to do that, get 150 to 200 of them, pull them out of a drawer or a pot, whatever you do. It's like, we can't play God to one lot of people. And it has to be, it's a very hard thing to get across the line.
All right.
Just because we can't fix everything. Doesn't mean we should try doing something.
We've had a good traverse of this. Ian, I'd like to hear your views on this before I bring this to a vote.
Just wondering is there a way that you can ensure preferential purchasing for first time buyers in perpetuity?
It would be very challenging. Like you could get them to sign conditions, like they must live in Central Otago, that kind of stuff. However, if they leave or they do that, it's going to be very challenging legally for this council. We could spend a lot of money in lawyers' fees chasing it for what could be a few number of houses. So, look, we could look at doing it, and I just don't think it would bring benefits to this council.
I think I recall talking to the lady from Queenstown Affordable Housing, Scott.
Julie.
Hey, Scott, I knew that wrong. The vast majority of their people who did get out, everyone talks about all those people who took the money and run from those houses were marriage breakups. With those, so how do you stop that? How many people living under the same roof?
Don't get married.
Yeah, face it.
I would give them some advice.
I just wanted to add as well, I'm actually be fair stipulating that because you could have a change in your circumstance. You might lose your job, you might have a health problem. There could be so many different things that could mean that you needed to sell that property.
I agree, and I think that is the secure homes model that we've already discussed with that council that has that situation as the landowner. So when we've moved away from that, so
Could you have a link to a percentage of the properties? In other words,
Look, we've got a proposition in front of us. We've had several iterations of propositions come around this table. I'm going to move A, B, C and D and get a seconder. Tame, thank you. Any further discussion? In case, all those in favour? Aye. Against?
Against?
You want that recorded, Nigel?
No, it doesn't, no.
Thank you. All right, thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff. We're 1:45, so we will recommence at 1:15. Thank you for your time.